Before we get stuck into this podcast, go to your local bottle-o or pub and ask for a Last Man Standing, a perfectly paced Australian lager. At Just Having a Crack, we love it, and the boys at Last Man Standing are great supporters of the show. Check them out on tap or at your local bottle-o. Let's get on with the show. Hey, Banger, I've been talking to some mates of mine about Also Insurance, and they've been getting them to do their business insurance cover, and, mate, they couldn't be happier.
Well, mate, it's very coincidental, Blakey, because they're a new sponsor of Just Having a Crack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Grant Mason, mate, he's been a long-term listener, which is really cool when
Yep.
you get listeners ringing us and saying, hey, I'd like to be involved in the show. How good's that?
Yeah, it's fantastic, mate. And when we spoke to Grant, one of the biggest things he said when he goes out to speak to people is the fact that they probably don't have the right insurance cover for their business, depending on what their business is.
And that's great. And if you do want to get in touch with Grant, obviously come through us, our Facebook page, or get in touch with us, Blakey and Banger.
Yep.
And Also Insurance, AWESO Insurance. Google it.
Yep.
We're so happy to have him on board
Yep.
and his team.
Yep. Let's get on with the show, Bang. G'day and welcome to Just Having a Crack. Blakey here. I'm here with Banger as usual. How are you, Banger?
Hey, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Beautiful weather. Back at Toombul because you're doing a bit of work, bit of consulting here, Blakey, which is fantastic. The great Toombul Cricket Club. And, mate, on the line today for our podcast, he's been on the podcast before, but we thought we'd get him back on. He lives in the Cayman Islands and he had a lot to do with Afghanistan. He coached their national cricket side. And we just thought we'd just find out with what's happening over there at the moment, how everybody is and, you know, what Ando's insight is to Afghanistan. And he's on the line, Ando. Peter Anderson. Mate, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Banger. Hey, Greg. How you going?
Yeah, great, mate. How are you?
Well, thanks.
Mate, before we get into a bit of that, what's going on, we are at Toombul Cricket Club, Ando, in your illustrious career for Eastern Queensland and Winnemem Valleys. And, mate, what memories of Toombul? You obviously would have played here a few times.
Oh yeah, it was a great little green. Always had a good wicket. Always had a bit of greenness to it. And I remember playing against Tomo, one of his few club appearances. They had Harry Fry, Jeff Thompson, and there's another Thompson, and they had a very good pace attack. But I barely remember Jack Evans cover driving Tomo, and I remember his brother running around the ground, screaming out to him, "Get him a helmet."
That wasn't the one. That wasn't the one where Greg White was sledging him from the non-strikers. Then benches going, "Whitey,
Correct.
Shut up, I'll knock you out."
Yeah, it was quite amusing actually. It was all Gen C's watching those two guys bat against Tomo, and Tomo had a little bit of a no-ball problem then, but he was letting them fly. I tell you.
Hey, did you face him that day? Did you face Tomo in any games?
No, I never faced him that day. I actually played a state trial, Jeff Thompson versus Jeff Demings 11.
Yeah.
And again, I ended up, I missed out on a couple of times, but I certainly stood behind the stumps where his batting was always entertaining.
Mate, you were saying earlier on too, Andy, we're having a quick chat, that Tomo was a great coach as well and didn't get the accolades that he probably should have.
Oh, mate, 100%. I think, to me, he was an excellent mentor. He probably copped a little bit of criticism. I just remember that he wasn't that person that threw a lot of balls and that type of situation. But from a player's point of view, I'm a great believer when you get to that state and first class and test level, you need more mentors in that situation. Your technical coaches should be at that intermediate level, the above schoolboy level, so you get the great foundations ready so they can go to the next level, because you can't learn to play spin and swing bowling when you're in test cricket. It's very difficult. But I thought Tomo was an excellent coach. He's just really switched on. He certainly gave you a lot of confidence as a cricketer. He believed in you, and I just don't think he gets enough credit from a coaching point of view. And I was very fortunate to probably play under, even though I was nowhere in those class as a cricketer, which sometimes is hard for those guys like the Barry Richards and the Jeff Thompsons, that they were such wonderful cricketers.
Yeah, we had you on a previous podcast, Ando, and when we went through your story, mate, we uncovered that you were coaching the Afghan national team and had a little bit also to do with their women's program. And, mate, we just thought it was opportune to, have a chat to you now just to get a civilian's perspective of the country and what's happening with them at the moment, and some of the insights that you would have seen from maybe even from a non-military point of view.
Yeah, it's it's like, it's been so much reports around the world, and certainly all the news media, and everyone's naturally smashing the news scene at this present. But I have spoken to a few people over there. I've still got some friends over there, and I've spoken to a couple of cricketers. But overall, without getting too political, I mean, it's been completely botched, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Whether people can argue whether they should have been there or not, but just everything's gone back to front. Not having the military there and getting the people out last is completely backfired. But I'm like a lot of people. The Taliban, I knew a couple of them. I know a couple of players with Taliban. Everyone's probably waiting to see if they've changed their makeup. I'm not sure if it's just a publicity stint at this stage, but it's going to be very interesting how it's going to go. But I always believe it'll probably get back into a civil war, because I just don't think they have the infrastructure in place to really form a government quickly. Basically got a bunch of hillbillies. You've certainly got some intelligent guys at the top, but also there's a lot of hillbillies there, and keeping them in control and not going back to their past atrocities is going to be very interesting. And from a cricket perspective, I had to have a laugh. The guy that threatened the jihad, he actually retired last year. He's announced his retirement. He's back in now because he's probably got a fair chance of getting selected.
So was he a player or a coach?
Yeah, he's a player. He's a player, and actually I saw a photo with him and the Taliban, because the Taliban's already gone to the cricket board and done the photo shoot with the AK-47s at the main, in the main office, and introduced to the national players and all that. So they're certainly doing a lot of publicity to get their propaganda going, saying they're back and that they're a change identity. But anything that I saw to do with them, mate, I just can't see it personally. But I suppose everyone hopes for peace and moving forward. But again, the biggest people have lost out of this are the girls and the women. I mean, that's something very, very sad, and I can't see that changing.
What you're obviously talking to people over there at the moment, and where is we see Kabul, but Afghanistan in cricket's obviously played all over the world, all over Afghanistan. Whereabouts? How will that operate?
It appears business as usual, but there are a couple of guys pretty nervous. I know a couple of young guys playing in the CPL now. I've just saw a few things on Facebook. They're all a bit, wanting peace and all that, but they're all a bit apprehensive on what's going to happen, because people don't realise, 20 years that's been a war. Most of the guys, it's the youngest population in the world. I mean, 70% of the people are under the age of 25, which is unbelievable. So a lot of these young people, especially the cricketers, they've experienced a lot of freedom, even though it's still a very violent place, and you've got to be walking on eggshells still. But the fact is that they haven't experienced what the Taliban used to do, and hangings in the soccer stadium next door, the beatings, and the stories. A lot of the old guys told me, if you didn't have a beard a certain length, they'd grab your face and and pull you over and hit you with a cane, all that type of stuff. But people forget also that Taliban brought cricket to ICC. They actually were a safety country, and they signed in 2001, I think, or 1999. So they do like their cricket, and naturally do understand it's a very much a stabilising force in Afghanistan cricket, because it's so popular. So they're naturally jumping to things to give themselves recognition and say that, hey, we have changed and we really want things to move forward. But it's wait and see. But unfortunately, once the Western people get out, the media's shut down, and they have their own people in power, I just think the propaganda will be let loose again. But,
it just seems to have imploded really, really quickly, Peter. And the uncertainty of it all must be it must be what's driving havoc at the moment.
Yeah, Blakey, the big thing, and I won't, I don't want to sort of disrespect anyone in the military who's been there, because they all did a great job, and I did go to a fair few bases in Mazar up there, the German base and the Dutch base, and naturally the British bases just outside Kabul. Mm-hmm. They must be really feeling, especially the Australian guys that served over and lost their mates over there, because they did a wonderful job. But I'm also pretty annoyed, without getting into politics, how some of these leaders have spoken about how poor the Afghan army was, and the fact they did a runner. But people don't understand, since 2014, the Afghan army were doing all the fighting, doing the whole fighting. You just had the logistics and all the intel, and naturally the airstrikes that really backed up their soldiers. I mean, they lost about 70,000 soldiers. And people don't realise the last 18 months, 2 years, they haven't lost any American soldiers at least there. But so they were doing all the hard yards. Yeah, the ghost stories of, armies not existing, schools not existing, people getting paid and all the money. It was totally corrupt. But I really felt for them, and the reason why they pulled the cover on them is just Bagwan Air Force Base, which they still should have kept up and should have got all the people to go through there, because, it's the size of Brisbane. Naturally not on such a modern scale, but the poly run to Kabul airport, which I've been to many times, is an absolute disaster getting people through that situation. So there's been a lot of mistakes made, but I just think, as we all have with the COVID and all the stuff going on in the world, I mean, the politicians are really, some are starting to show their true colours, and it's unfortunately, it's the people that suffer all the time. But but stabilising that situation, it's really going to be hard to tell. My gut feeling, I always thought that it'll turn into a civil war, because the Northern Alliance is very strong, even though they're one province. If they don't get their act together quickly and form a government and get some type of stability, which is going to be very hard when they've had all their funds frozen by the World Banks, I can't see other than, sadly to say, that it'll turn into a civil war.
It's it's just awful, isn't it? Mate, I know I hate to bring it back to cricket in such an awful time over there, but from a cricket point of view, what I did get from you saying is it is something that keeps the country together, cricket. How many of the players in that, say, top 15 players for Afghanistan, and we've lost a couple of the ones that played the T20 out here and all their guns of G, but they've left the country, haven't they, a lot of those guys?
Oh, yeah. I'm not... I know a couple of them are outdoor playing the Caribbean Premier League. I know Naveen. I remember he was a young bowler there in my academy. And I heard his comments. He's a bit unsure what's going on. It's really weird, because, a lot of the players from outside the Kabul city central, I mean, most of those guys are young guys, are born there in that situation. They're a lot more, how could you say, they're a lot more westernised in their, because they travel a lot playing cricket. But a lot of the guys from the country areas where the Taliban were very strong, Herat, all those areas there, the Taliban, were really the people that ran this place. And people just don't think this has just happened. The Taliban control most of the country areas for a long, long time. It's just that they have a big following there, and naturally the biggest problem with Afghanistan, all the poppies, mate. 89% of the world heroin comes out of there, mate. And naturally it's easy to grow poppies there and wheat due to the climate. And they pay up front, and that's why they had a massive support in the country areas, and they supported cricket as the only sport they really, other than kite flying, would you believe, that they supported. Football and volleyballs, they certainly, killed a number of those guys over the years. I remember 80 volleyball players got bombed in a tournament, and a lot of them were killed on the border. So it's going to be very interesting what happens and how they really, straight away they've gone to the cricket board, they've released photos, and they've redone the CEO again. I mean, that's the second one. The other guy stepped down straight away. So they'll have their people in place that supported them. I heard there's another coach. I'm not sure it's Lance Clusen's coaching there. I don't know what the situation is there. But from a cricketing point of view, the ICC would be... Well, it's going to be very interesting how the ICC and Cricket Australia reacts with this, because the government won't be recognised. I mean, they're a terrorist group. And whether they say they're going to change and they're going to change their ways, I mean, I really hope they do, because everyone's sick of war. But, what's Cricket Australia going to do it? I mean, what's ICC cricket going to do with women's cricket is growing so strong in the world, and women's cricket, especially Australian cricket, has become probably the best marketing tool and feel good thing has been the women's cricket.
Yeah.
So, with the thing onus on, sorry.
No, I was going to say, this with what's happening over there, there will be no development in women's cricket, surely.
No, not at all. If you're going to Australia, I can't see it. I mean, they disbanded it when they're under what I consider a Western regime with Ashraf Ghani. His wife was, a Lebanese Christian, so he was quite promoting women. And from my point of view, I don't know about the corruption side of it, but I found him very good, and he's very much proactive in making sure women went to universities. I mean, a friend of mine sent a photo from Hoyt University the other day showing the girls going to university, but they had a petition between the guys and the girls. And he just wrote, "This is a start of it." Just a petition. I mean, it's we just don't understand what the whole thing's about, and it'll be very interesting how Cricket Australia, with the single Test match coming up. I mean, they're going to take the side, well, we've got to keep on supporting cricket because hopefully sport brings everyone together. But it's so politically interwoven these days. It's just all the Olympics, and with all these issues and cancer cultures and all this stuff that's coming out, it's going to be very, very hard to, sit on a moral fence and say, well, bugger the girls and the women in Afghanistan, and we'll invite the guys over to play cricket. So
where was that
really
test, Ando? Where was that being played?
In Hobart, Australia, later this year. But whether COVID knocks it out too, I'm not sure. But it was a one-off test match at Hobart because I spoke to a couple of players, the wicketkeeper there. He was just asking me about the conditions and all that. So it's a real dilemma for everyone in ICC. But mind you, ICC knew about the situation when I was there 5 years ago, mate, and they just turned a blind eye to everything too. So it'll be interesting what way they take their perception, because there's going to be a lot of pressure. And again, I don't want to get into politics and all that stuff, but with the issues and the whole thing's in a major turmoil, in my opinion, because, and this is only going to be expanded by Afghanistan, because you've got a lot of tribal issues there. You've got a lot of racism. You've got the Pashtuns and the Tajiks and Hazaras, which is a really messy situation. Then you've got the Taliban, who really picks on the minorities, and horrific stories. So
explain that, Ando. You mentioned a few different areas there.
Well, you got Dari and Pashtuns, the two national languages, and Pashtun means Afghan. So Pashtun to them are the real Afghan people. And the Tajiks and the Hazaras are, I'll use a word, they're more Asian in looks because they're close to the border of Mongolia, China. Because this country has 5 countries surrounding it. So you can see why everyone's trying to conquer it. I mean, it's a graveyard of empires. You go there and you've got 2,000 or 3,000 English graves from 1700 on the hill. Everyone's had a go at it, but it's such a difficult country to navigate and to conquer, because you've got so many different tribes. And the big thing also is why the Afghan army laid down their weapons. I mean, why bother fighting when they haven't been paid for 6 months? The fact is that they're tribal and they're really fighting for their families' situation. So that's the whole thing, which is, people say it's a complex situation, but I don't like that word. It's just such a tribal fest pot of everything. So, you've got all those issues. So you've got different groups, and the minorities and the Hazaras and the Tajik, which aren't allowed to play cricket.
Not allowed.
I had one boy there. He was a very good cricketer, and I really wanted to push him under 19s, and they just couldn't stomach it because he looked slightly different. So the Pashtuns are very proud. They're very aggressive. They're very much more Pakistan. Then you understand the Taliban situation with Pakistan coming over the border. So it's a lot of different ethnic groups. So some of those groups are minorities, and then you got the Sunnis and the Shiites. So you got 2 different interwoven religious cultures inside tribal cultures. So they don't like each other. So you imagine that you've got tribes, you've got different ethnic groups, which are minorities, and you've got religion on top of the Islamic religion, all thrown into one. So to me, that's just...
That would be not easy to coach a cricket side with all of that. Like when you were over there, Ando, you would have been having to, apart from teaching him how to bowl and bat, there would have been so much politics, wouldn't it?
It was massive politics in the corridors of Afghanistan cricket. But again, when I originally spoke to you guys, I saw three CEOs, 2 vice chairmen, so that's 4. I saw them change 3 times. Saw a captain drop, replaced. I saw selection was on the selection board. You're off the selection board now. You have an opinion, but you don't have a selection. So, yeah, it was just frustrating and demoralising. And I couldn't imagine what the soldiers went for, because you couldn't trust anyone. You know, the landmines, you're walking over eggshells all the time. You didn't know who was who. Then you had the grey army had their infiltrators and just turn a gun on after 5 years when you're sitting playing cards with them. So I honestly, and you know, it's all about education too. I mean, they could go back to Stone Ages, mate. They really could. And unfortunately, everyone wants to get out of the place, and I can understand why to a certain extent. But it's sad for the Australians, Americans, all the soldiers, because they did a lot of good things, and they had a force of 2,506 NATO forces in there. They kept it pretty tight for the last 2 years.
Yeah, they did.
But
mate, just from a cricket point of view, Ando, I mean, I was just thinking Justin Langer's copping a heap at the moment for going too hard on his players. Maybe they send him over there to coach Afghanistan for a while and see how it might settle him down. He might go easy on the Taliban players.
I don't think he would have lasted, mate, because he hasn't won. He would have been gone. He would have been gone straight away, man. I mean, and again, I played against Justin, and look, he's passionate, and I imagine he's like most coaches I meet. They're good guys. They've got different ways they handle things, but you know, I never throw off another coach because it's bloody hard. But you know, I just make the comment. You can thank his lucky stars. He's got a stable, mature cricket board that can look beyond just blame the coach for everything. But he wouldn't last 5 minutes in associate country, mate, because you live and die by results.
Yeah, look,
you know, we cop letters
Greg
after.
Chappell. Remember Greg Chappell when he coached India?
Oh, you know, when you start going coaching around the world, you're really, you know, people been to Sri Lanka and these other countries which the army run, and you know, results don't go your way, mate. You don't get paid, and you get the pink slip, and see you later. So, you know, I'm not saying not being disrespectful to Justin, because no doubt he's passionate. He's probably an excellent coach, but they get bloody well paid, and you know, the money he gets, I probably would have gotten loose change at the bar, mate. So that's the way it is, mate. You got to produce the results, and you either got to get the senior players to go your direction, or you're in trouble, mate.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah. Hey, Pete, just from your point of view, I mean, obviously the Nationals and Afghan and all that sort of stuff, obviously instability is sort of, I suppose it's a way of life for them, and some because of all the factions. But now that this has happened, have you spoken to anybody over? Like, is there a genuine fear now that you know, that this could even spiral, say, worse than what it was prior to overseas action?
I was speaking about 3 or 4 people, you know, just messaging or Facebook, or I did do a Skype call with one of the ex-national players, and he's from Jalalabad, and his family's very strong in cricket. His brother was actually the first coach of Afghanistan. You know, and actually his brother was a very strong Talib, and but, you know, I had a good chat to Kareem, and look, I think from the point of view that they're happy the Americans are kind of out. There was a bit of a love-hate relationship there. And but they're also a bit apprehensive that they're all hoping the Taliban are not the same people as they were 20 years ago. They expressed to me that, you know, things will be better. It'll take time, but outside that, they got a massive job. I mean, they maintain stability, and cricket will give them that. But the fact is that India gave Afghanistan cricket board a cricket ground in India, so they do a lot of training over there now. But the Taliban don't have a very good relationship with India. They're more so Pakistan. So that's another issue that they're going to have to work through. And a lot of the embassies are closed down. So getting tours organised and being able to, they just cancelled the Pakistan tour, one-off test match. So what's going to happen now is that, unfortunately, the players could get starved, and they could have a brain drain, mate. They could have players who go in the CPL and going to Australia could turn around and get given a, you know, asylum residence in Australia. I mean, I haven't spoken to Rashid Khan, but, you know, he's a very proud Afghan, and he's very well respected over there. But, geez, they're going to get starved at cricket. What do the guys do? They got they got to become mercenaries, mate. And if they can get out, if you got a second passport, it's like gold, mate.
Where's Rashid? Where does Rashid? Where did he grow up and live over there?
Originally from Jalalabad. He learned his cricket on the border, but he's kind of snuck in the last 12 months of my cricket there, and he came to the academy, and I was a bit funny at first because we had people suddenly float in from Pakistan with different passports and said, I was down the road here. I thought, that's strange. I've never heard of him. So there was a little bit of that going on because you got to understand, $100 you can get a Pakistan passport, and that was happening. And again, I'm not telling porky pies there. I saw it when I was in the high performance office, and but that was all about building them up quickly to get to that test status. It's all about, quick as possible, mate. They shot up so quickly, and naturally a lot of players came from Peshawar, which is on the border. They actually lived there. Then the ICC got a bit dirty on them and said, well, you got to have a house in Afghanistan because you're living in Pakistan. So I got in a little bit of trouble for that, saying, we've got to get these guys based here because they're coming for camps. We have camps on camps, mate. We're at the stage having 15-day camps every 4 weeks. I'm going, guys, what's the issue here? And the dangerous road in the world is a 10-hour drive from over to Pakistan. Peshawar through Jalalabad is a very dangerous road, car accident-wise. So they were forced to form a cricket board when I was there. They never had a cricket board, so I put a lot of pressure on them. People don't realise that. They just had the CEO and the chairman select the teams until we formulated a proper selection team. Then forced them to get a cricket board, which Ashraf Ghani said, right, they're going to pick some politicians and change it every 2 years and start rotating the CEO every 2 years so they couldn't get their hands in the jar all the time. So there was good things happening, and it really fast-tracked them quickly. So I can really see it at present. It's going to be very interesting how the ICC react, and Australia is going to react.
Yeah.
And what India's going to do. So,
did they ever talk to you, Ando? Have you ever had a phone call from Cricket Australia or the ICC about what your knowledge?
No. I did a report, and the report got sent back to them with my name taken off, and they took half the information. But you have to be pretty silly not to realise the writing was mine and the comments were mine. So both Andy Moles and I really got pulled over the rafters, and we're told to shut our mouths, and what happens here stays here. Yeah. So that was really, really disappointing. That caused Andy's downfall, actually, because Andy ended up getting sacked after his team in Sri Lanka because the ICC asked us to do a full report on the whole thing, the World Cup report, what's happening there, facilities. And I asked them specifically, I said, this is not going to be given. No, it's confidential. And it got straight back to them, but they removed our names. But the comments we made are just so obvious. Like, if I'm head of the academy, I'm going to comment about the academy, and the nets aren't this, and they put a fountain up. Yet my players need cricket balls, and we need this, we need that. Who's going to say that if I'm the only bloke living there full time? So they're not that stupid. They put 2 and 2 together, and so when the last time I spoke to you guys, I was pretty pissed off. With the ICC, and but health-wise, no, I actually I was writing some cricket articles just as freelance, and did one on the disability team I coached, and I wanted to release one on the women, and it got pushed back, and so we can't put that, it's too political, and so it's going to upset our sponsors. I won't mention the magazine, but that's what they said. Sorry, we're sponsored by a certain thing, Cricket Australia. We're not. Sorry, mate. It's a great article, but we're not going to put it in there. So, so all those little things. And
it makes it
really disconcerting.
Greg Rowell's on the Australian Cricket Board now, Ando. You played against Greg?
Yeah, great guy, Growler.
Yeah,
he's the only guy who used to stood behind me in the mirror with his bowling action. I was pretending hooking him. Only bloke running up the corridor practicing his run, but what a great guy.
I think he'll be great. I think he'll be great for him.
He's a fantastic guy, mate.
And
he's a good guy, excellent bowler, could bowl a heavy ball too, mate. He was, he gave 100%. So it's good to see people like that.
Yeah, but, I think that's a really good thing, mate. So you're Ando, you're obviously over there in the Cayman Islands, mate. You've just had a hurricane, and you survived that. We were supposed to have you on last week, weren't we? And that hurricane went through.
Oh yeah, I kept on cutting out. Yeah, no, I did well. place I'm renovating down south only lost one palm tree. It's about a 50-year-old home. Everyone else has got new houses around me, mate. They got smacked. So I was pretty happy. Not an ounce of water in it, and the old thing's still standing. So deep down, I was hoping it might have got wiped out to get insurance on it. But
that's really good. Hey, mate, we're probably, you know what, just to finish off, Ando, with it, if you could do anything, you know, just say they flew you into Kabul tomorrow morning and said, Ando, you've taken over, you know, everything that's happened so far here. And two questions, I suppose. One is from a cricket point of view, but if you could do something to help from a country point of view, what would you do?
What with the Taliban in control?
Yep.
And present government?
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's I could probably have the answers with the previous regime because they were, they were a lot more lenient and more, how could I say, tolerant to a lot of different ethnic groups. It's a tough one. I mean, from a moral point of view, I mean, I've had a couple ask me back. Yeah, a couple have asked me to come back. A couple of guys have mentioned, things will be fine, they won't touch you. But it's not even that point of view. Is the fact that you really know how they do act when the curtains are closed over. So I personally can see two ways going. It's either going to be a civil war, which will absolutely destroy cricket. Players won't be able to get to certain provinces. International wise, it'll again. People won't want to come there in any type of shape or form to help. They'll have to base all their cricket in India, which will cause a lot of political problems. It's going to be very, very difficult. It really depends on how they have changed, if they have make a real effort to get everyone involved, especially the women and the girls. I mean, I couldn't think of anything worse than the world of being born over there, mate, in this present situation as a female. So it's going to go two ways, mate. It's either going to go down the tube or the world takes on it and they really open up their doors and say, right, we're willing to make a change. But deep down, I can't see it, mate. People don't change, mate.
Yeah. So, particularly when you said about the rigidity between the different factions and all that sort of, Pete, where, if there's no common ground struck there, it's hard to think, isn't it, that if they can't find common ground there, it's very hard to find common ground as a nation, yeah?
100%, mate, and they'll use people to depict that things are fine, but behind it, mate, I can just see what's going to be. There'll be a lot of door knocking going on, mate. There's going to be a lot of people because that's the way they are, mate. When you get to tribal situation, and it's not a racist comment, tribalism is more important, mate. And there's a lot of 20 years of war. There's a lot of people that haven't forgiven people, mate. And you can feel all the veterans who have been over there, they'd be really struggling with what's going on because, you lost 42 Australians over there and 2,500 Americans and NATO forces, mate. I mean, I'd like to think they did a lot of great jobs. So hopefully it wasn't in vain, but just how it's articulated and gone through, it's a real kick in the teeth for those guys, mate.
And we do a lot with the 42 for 42, Ando. You listen to the podcast, and Sean Mulqueen's been on and Spin, and we're actually, we're just really feeling for those guys at the moment. The 41 Australians lost their lives there, and many, many more from suicide when they got home. And Pete, you mentioned earlier on about driving the most dangerous roads. Did you travel when you were over there to any other countries via road?
No, I flew. If I left Kabul, I went to Bangladesh. I naturally flew. I flew up to Mazar, which is right up the top end. I flew up there with the Dutch Air Force up to them. I travelled road-wise. I got invited to Jalalabad and Kandahar, but I got told not to go the last second because the Talibs own most of the checkpoints outside of the major cities. They had for a number of years, mate. And every village is different because they're all paying people to grow poppies. And it's warlords, mate. That's what it is. And that's the whole situation. It's the best way to describe it. Many warlords, and that's how it works. So, people forget that Russia didn't destroy Kabul, mate. It was the warlords firing missiles at each other, destroyed the city after the Russians left. So I can't see other than that, but it's a dangerous place to drive, though, mate. I mean, that's just as bad as anything. No seatbelts, and you got the space savers on two sides of the car, and you got the plastic Glad wrap for the window. So it's a real. Oh, mate, it's an eye opener, mate.
And you'd be going up mountains with side roads there wouldn't be too many bollards or anything like that, would there?
No, I gave that a miss. The famous road going to Birmingham, the famous road where it's about a 2 foot 1,000-metre drop, I gave that a miss. I know a few people did that with the old trucks, so no.
It doesn't, mate.
I tried to keep off the road.
Have you, and the Taliban leaders, have you ever met any of these guys?
I did meet some Taliban, a couple of them, mainly the mullahs, mate. They were evident, they were present. They were they're very precise in how they speak and all that. But look, mate, it's like you just don't know what people really think, mate. Like I said, I'll never forget the guy who disdained Americans. I mean, when we had our final in our T20 competition, about 20,000 people in the ground, and Pepsi donated a huge, massive presentation board, and we had bloody fireworks, which I hit the ground. I didn't realise the fireworks were going up when we were on the stage. And he's around picking the US flag off because it was sponsored by US on all of them, little flags around the thing because they just disdain for America, mate. It was just amazing. But, threatened me when I was in the gym. You keep playing the music, I'm going to cut the wires. And you do little things like this when you walk around. People make comments to you and you can just see it underlining things. And, little things like that, music. And so we have no understanding if they do go back to strict laws, mate. Music's gone, mate. Girls will not be allowed out of their house unless they're chaperone. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Fingernails, I'll chop your paint your nails, mate. It's very well documented. Chop your fingers off if you're female, mate. It's very, very sad for the girls because they made a lot of headway, mate. That's one thing which was fantastic.
And you had a lot to do with that, Ando.
Only from my point of view, I did a lot of many things. Like strange things. I opened the car door for the only girl that worked at the cricket board. She had an office and a business card. She was a development officer, and she never did anything. She sat there the whole day. And I used to knock on the door. When's the women's start? When it's starting up? Oh, soon, sir. Soon, sir. And that was just purely a showpiece for the ICC to say we're doing something. But she used to get flown to Iraq, pick up the receipts, come back, get on the plane, get off the plane, come back, and present it. And that's all she did. And that's the honest truth because she told me that. She told me, showed me the receipts. So you had a lot of that stuff going on, mate.
And you said you opened a car door for her one day.
I did all those type of little things, mate. And just little things that we do normally here. Mainly probably be a bit of a smart ass in front of the guys. Just little nippets now and then to show this is how you respect people. You do that. You do no different, you guys, if you're over there because that's how you're brought up. Yeah. So those little things, and people give you strange looks, But all those little cultural things, especially for the players, Andy and I really drummed on the players when we went overseas. You say please when the people serve you a meal because, all these little things they're not used to. You let the ladies walk through, you do this, you do that. It's a real education process. And naturally, all the senior players now have travelled so much. I mean, naturally, when we see them on TV, they're very respectful and, Saddest thing's made education, mate, and they go back 12th century, mate. That's your problem. People just don't have education and understand different things.
Yeah, no, mate. Peter. Thanks for coming on and having a chat to us today, mate. It's looking back. I mean, you're passionate about anywhere you coached, but I know this one it really hits home with you, doesn't it? It
does, mate. I mean, there's still people going to stay over there. I've spoken to one lady; she's still going to stay there. She's been there since the 70s and do a wonderful job there. They're making clothing for the ladies, and that was one of the 5 places I lived in. Actually, I didn't mention that I moved 5 times when I was in Kabul because I kept on moving myself around to give myself that situation, not being caught in one area. And she's doing a brilliant job. Parsa, they teach the girls to cook. Make clothing, make handbags and all that, and they run the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts over there. So that'll be very interesting. I did speak to her. She's staying, but she's very streetwise. She's part of what we call the crescent, which is the Turkish emblem, which is Red Cross. So that's plastered on all the gates that I lived in. So I think the Taliban will respect that because they do need people to stay on to help the community, and all those NGOs will be staying on. Because kind of the Taliban let that happen. They realise that's an important part of society, that they need food and they need medical stuff, mate. Well, that's going to be the next big issue is food and not having the banks open and running out of money and getting aid in. It could turn to an absolute quagmire, mate.
I don't understand. Very, very I don't understand at the airport when I see it on the news at the moment, and probably there's all these people going to the airport and they're flying them all out and so, we got 30,000 out. Who makes the decision on who goes and who stays?
Well, that's the hardest thing. I mean, they had one runway, mate. If you go to Kabul airport, it's the most dangerous place. You want to get bombed. You got one roundabout coming in. You got a square shot of the building. You got east entrance, left entrance, all this stuff. It is the worst place to be, mate. There's one place you want to get out of quickly is that airport. So that's why I don't understand that Bagwan Air Force Base, literally just outside Kabul, why they didn't just secure that and keep that with 4 or 5 runways, whatever they had, and the F-18s there. Why wouldn't you keep that open and just corridor, send your rangers out and just corridor everyone down there, get them out, then do whatever you're doing. But they've got themselves really cornered, and they've got 10,000 people are telling me. And there's people that can't get there, mate, because the Taliban are controlling all the 75, what we call a ring of steel around Kabul, the whole city. When I used to travel around, you go through 3 or 4 checkpoints, just get to the cricket ground. And so they control all that. So the Americans or the Allies are just basically sitting in the Air Force Base, controlling probably 20 metres outside the front gates. So I don't know how it's going to go, because to me it could be a place to get hit quite easily. And you got ISIS there, you got all these other factions there, mate. So again, if you look beyond just domestic problems, you'll just see what happens internationally. That this is going to turn into a pretty ugly situation.
Did we lose as the Air Force Base? Have the Taliban taken that over? Have they?
The Bagwan, yeah, they left it. And they released 5,000 ISIS prisoners, mate, and prisoners. The Americans left it overnight. Didn't tell anyone. They just got out, packed their bags, and left, and took all their troops out. Then suddenly had to bring everyone back in. So the whole thing's been completely botched.
Yep.
And you get your people out first, you get your equipment, then your soldiers, and then you either level your equipment, because they've ended up with 80-odd billion worth of equipment, which is in the hands of a group such as that. So the whole thing was done so poorly that you got yourself cornered now, and you're cornered like a rat, because within 20 metres you're looking at the Taliban. So they're either paying them or let them through. I don't know what's going on. They're either paying them, but I know a lot of people have been turned back with passports. Some people losing their passports. Then you get to the airport, you got 10,000 poor people trying to get out who probably don't have the paperwork to get out, but they're desperate to get out. So you've got, start the hand-picking people to get out now.
It's terrible. And it just seems like, it's a very, very complex situation, mate. And unfortunately, it's probably not going to, it's not going to go away anytime soon. And, mate, we really appreciate you taking the time out, mate, to let us into a little bit of the insight as to what's life like over in Afghanistan, mate. And we hope you're well, mate, and enjoy that weather in the Cayman Islands.
Thanks, Blakey. Thanks, Banger.
Hey, thanks, mate.
Hi, you've been listening to Just Having a Crack. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure you jump across to our Facebook page and like our Facebook page, and more importantly, like the podcast on your favourite podcast app.
That's correct, mate. I'm getting my head around this, Blakey, because I am a complete Luddite.
Yeah.
But now to work out subscribe podcast station, people say to me, how do we listen to the podcast? Bang, and I go, well, you go into the podcast app.
Yeah.
And then you put in there Just Having a Crack.
Yep.
Correct? Spelled Havin.
Yes.
Having a Crack, and you hit subscribe.
Yep.
And they all come up.
Yep.
You get all of them. How cool is that?
Yeah, well, it's great because behind the scenes there's a lot of work that goes into our podcast.
Well, there
series.
is, mate. You do most of it.
Well, look, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that you bring the talent, and I just clean the back end up. But it's important that if you like our series, get behind it and support it, because we really appreciate the support, and we really appreciate your comments.
I think so, mate. I think at the moment, what's been really good fun is that we're getting. It's just like having a yarn. I mean, some people are saying to us, it's like listening to a few blokes having a yarn and a chat, and girls now, having a chat and a yarn about life, general, their world, their sport, and it's cool. It's good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for listening. Look out for the next one on your favourite podcast app, and you've been listening to Just Having a Crack.
Let's have a crack.